Esther Derby, and after a long break, I am back with another episode of the Change by Attraction podcast. And this is a podcast for people who want to change some aspect of their organization. If you want to know more about how I think about change, you can pick up a copy of my book, 7 Rules for Positive Productive Change. So, in this episode, I want to talk about voice. And voice essentially is the ability to speak up. It's the ability to use your voice to express your views, to express your ideas, to express your doubts, whatever is on your mind. So I want to start with a story. When I was a corporate employee, I was assigned a new manager named Ted. And the first staff meeting I went to, he asked for input on how to solve a particular problem. And since I was the newest person, I sort of hung back because I didn't understand the whole context. I had some thoughts about the problem, but I figured other people knew more about it, and that having the newest person in the room just kind of start in on it was not necessarily a good look. So I waited, and no one spoke up. And after a while, Ted said, "Well, doesn't anyone have anything to say?" And I said, "Well, I've got an idea." And I shared my idea about it, with the caveat that, I don't know the whole context, but I think this is similar to something I've encountered before. Gave my idea, and Ted proceeded to pick it apart and imply that I was really pretty stupid. And I understood then why no one else had spoken up. There's almost always some friction in speaking up in a hierarchical situation, and sometimes even in a pretty flat situation. For me, at that point, it was, I was lower in the hierarchy and I was the newcomer. And so that made me hesitate to speak up. But it's always there in some form. It's an artifact of hierarchy. And very often people are afraid on some level, maybe not shaken in their boots scared, but it crosses their mind that if they speak up, someone above them in the hierarchy will not like it. I don't think it's possible to totally eliminate that friction in hierarchies. Because, as I said, it's an artifact of hierarchy and status and power difference. But I think there are things that you can do that will reduce the impact of that friction and make it easier for people to speak up. And if you're a manager, I think it is in your best interest to do that because it will increase your access to information that you need to do your job and to solve problems or prevent problems. When people are hesitant to speak up, there's a cost. There's a cost to those employees who might not speak up because they feel less engaged. There's a cost to the organization because the organization has lost out on some of their good ideas or perhaps learning about a risk or learning about a perspective that would have been super valuable. So for you, if you're in a management role, there's definitely an advantage for you. There's an advantage for the employees, and there's an advantage for the organization as a whole to reduce the friction that keeps people from speaking up. I don't think most people want to suppress thoughts and conversations and ideas in their organization. I don't think they start out wanting to shut people down, even though some people, like my manager Ted, managed to do that quite effectively. I suspect he just wasn't really very aware of the cause and effect between the way he acted when people brought up ideas he didn't agree with and the fact that people didn't speak up very much. That's a story for another day. I suspect that a lot of people haven't given much thought to how hierarchy and status and power differences influences people's readiness to speak up. I suspect that some people have a notion that, people should be strong and stand up for their ideas and speak out. They should just be able to stand up, and if they aren't, it's their own dang problem. Neither of these is particularly helpful. So let's look at how we can make it easier for people to raise their voices, to use their voices to speak up with great ideas, not so great ideas, risks, concerns, hunches, all of those things that people might bring to the table as information, but sometimes get squashed. So if you're a manager, helping people speak up or making it easier for people to speak up, creating that environment benefits you through information, more engaged people, and you have more and better ideas to deal with. As I said, that benefits both you as a manager and the organization. So if you have formal authority, or informal authority for that matter, here are 3 ways that you can make it easier for people to speak up. First, you can normalize that problems are part of life and business and projects. As much as we would like things to always work flawlessly, that just doesn't always happen that way. And we spend our lives solving one problem after another. That's just kind of how life goes. So there are 3 sorts of problems. Amy Edmondson has identified these, that there are problems that are preventable, could be prevented by a known procedure, a known way to handle things. So when those problems happen, you want to look at why. Not to blame an individual, but to understand if the training was insufficient, if the known procedure was so burdensome that people struggled to follow it and took shortcuts, to find out if people are under so much pressure, time pressure or whatever kind of pressure, that they are taking shortcuts with that procedure. So potentially preventable, happened anyway. Figure out what went wrong in applying the known procedure or the known approach. See if you can find a way to make it easier for people to follow that procedure so those preventable problems don't happen. A second kind of problem is the result of complexity. And these sorts of problems are really hard to predict and they're hard to prevent. You can think about it to some extent by thinking systemically and looking at how things interact with each other. For example, in the mortgage crisis a while back, it was fairly predictable that giving out mortgages to people who had no income was not going to work out, right? So thinking about, what are likely outcomes of a course of action, or thinking about what might surprise us about this, can sometimes prevent those sorts of problems in the complex space, but sometimes it's just a confluence of factors that you could not predict that ends up causing some kind of problem or error. And again, those are an opportunity to learn and see if there are some ways that you can prevent them, but also to recognize that, sometimes problems are not preventable. They happen because a number of factors come together in a certain way at a certain time. Maybe it will never happen again. And this is kind of the nature of working in a complex space. The third kind of problem are problems that come from an intelligent risk that didn't work out. So these are situations where somebody has done an experiment or they've had a hypothesis about something that will work, and they have thought through what the potential benefits are. They've thought about what to look at that'll tell them it's moving in the right direction or not, and it doesn't work out. Every decision we make in organizations is a risk. We're always taking a little gamble on it. It's not 100% guarantee for most significant decisions. But intelligent risk-taking, making a bet that you have thought through, there's a lot to be learned from that. So normalize problems and recognize that there are different kinds of problems and you might want to respond to them differently. You can also invite people to bring up problems. The fact that someone brings up a problem doesn't always mean that it lands in your lap to fix it. And I think that's part of what keeps people from, not wanting to hear about problems or saying things like, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. I really dislike that phrase. If people knew how to solve it or felt like they had permission to solve it, they would. So when someone brings up a problem, show some openness. Ask questions, not like you're grilling them in the police station, shining the bright light in their eyes and trying to catch them up. Just show some curiosity. Ask them what they've observed, ask them, what data they have, ask them what data might be useful, but don't ask for excessive proof. That will shut people down. Make it an exploration, show some curiosity and openness. You can accept hunches. Sometimes people just have a feeling that something's not quite right, but they can't exactly articulate why. This is actually fairly common with people who have years of experience and compiled knowledge about a domain, where they know stuff that they can't always articulate. They can't put their finger on it. So accept hunches. So if you feel like you don't have authority, you can still help other people speak up by being an ally. So when someone says something that might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion or a little risky to bring up, you can say something to support them. Like, I've been wondering about that too. Or, I have a little data that might shed some light about that. Or just ask a open, curious question. Right? Oh, tell me more about that. So that kind of allyship can help. Most organizations hire smart, capable people. Making it easier for people to speak up will lead to better decisions, better engagement, and better outcomes. So, accept the fact that power and status differences influence how willing and ready people are to speak up. It creates a little bit of friction. Normalize problems. We don't love problems, but they are part of life. So we need to figure out how to deal with them, and it's almost always easier to deal with them when they are small. Be open to exploring issues and ideas. You don't have to grill people, you just have to show some curiosity. Be willing to listen to hunches. They are an early warning sign very often. It's just that no one has really connected the dots yet. Be an ally. So when someone does speak up, support them. When you do these things, you open up the information environment. Giving people voice gives everyone information. You'll learn about problems earlier, and people will be more invested. And that's good for everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time.